A common question asked by teachers who are adopting Khan Academy in the classroom is, how do I go about aligning Khan Academy to my planned curriculum? So if you were a teacher, you probably had a number of topics that you had planned to cover this year. For example, if you look at the Common Core standards, you would see something like this. This is the Common Core website where it lists all the various standards in mathematics. And if I scroll down, suppose we were in 5th grade, these are the topics that most states have adopted. Some stuff on the place value system, fractions, measurement and data, some geometry, and a number of other topics that you may have planned to teach in addition to these standards. Or if you're in many states, what they've actually done is taken the Common Core standards and augmented it slightly. So you may be looking at a list of topics like this that you want to that you would like to cover this year. And if you go to Khan Academy, you would see something like this. This is our knowledge map, and it starts off from single digit addition and the student would move their way down. Has a number of topics, fractions, a little bit of geometry, and if you keep going down, even more advanced, a good bit of algebra, some trigonometry, pre-calculus, and even some calculus at the end. So you may be looking at this knowledge map with a large variety of topics, basically from K through 12, and thinking, how do I ensure that my student actually focuses on the right material, has 100% mastery and a full understanding of the material that's expected of the grade level standards, and by the same token operates at a pace and timing that is appropriate for the grade level. So if we actually break it down, what you may have as a teacher is something that looks a little bit like this. And this is a gross oversimplification, but what you may have is a calendar, so September, October, November as you go through the school year, and a set of units mapped to that. So in September you would teach units 1 and 2, in October unit 3, November 4 and 5, etc. And during each of these months you would have a whole slew of material. It could be lessons plans, projects, homework, exams, other things that you've built up over the years. So there's a lot of material that you have, and the question would be, how do I leverage that material? How do I leverage that curriculum while using a system like Khan Academy that it really is a whole different set of content and a whole different paradigm of learning? And at face value, it may actually seem that Khan Academy, by its very definition, is built to be different than this. By its very definition, Khan Academy is a global resource with content that is applicable across all the states in the United States and around the world. So we're not aligned to any specific curriculum. And by the same token, it's a self-paced system. It's designed by its very nature to be individualized, where students operate at their own pace. So there seems to be a very major conflict here. But let's really break it down into both parts of the question. So it really is, how do I manage the pacing? How do I manage the pacing that the student goes through, and how do I manage the content that the student focuses on? So in the first question here on pacing, like I mentioned, Khan Academy really is fundamentally designed to be at the student's pace. And the whole notion that on October 2nd you're going to teach Unit 3 to the class, regardless of where the students are, regardless of which students are ready for it or which students have already mastered that concept, really isn't a part of the fundamental philosophy that we're trying to drive. We're trying to drive a world where students are able to work on the material and the concept that is most appropriate for them and is going to take their learning to the next level. Now, that doesn't mean you have to completely throw away this whole old paradigm of doing things. What it actually means is we move away from a world where you may learn everything on a certain date, on a date. So instead of teaching all of the students in the class a particular unit on a certain date, we no longer say that everyone will learn that way, but you may learn by a certain date. So what that means is, as a teacher, you would still go through the units and the pacing that you expected to cover, but instead of teaching everybody Unit 3 on October 2nd, what you would actually do is look at the dashboard. Look at the Khan Academy dashboard of which students have mastered what, and identify which students have not mastered Unit 3 by that point in time. And the students that have not mastered it by that point in time would be the ones that you would take out into a small group instruction and still leverage all the lesson plans and other material that you may have to help teach those topics. Now, if every student has mastered it, Unit 3 by that date already, because they've all moved ahead and have shown that they've watched the videos and can do all of the exercises, what you still may do at that point in time is apply the learning. So take the projects that were associated with the Unit 3 and try to do that work with the whole group and push the learning to a deeper level within the class. So Khan Academy doesn't mean that the students are free to move anywhere they want and not focus on the topics that are expected of them of that grade level to the detriment of their end of year exams. Rather, it means that students are free to remediate topics that they probably or should have learned, potentially should have learned in prior years, or move ahead if they've really shown true mastery of concepts and push the frontiers of their knowledge. But the teacher still plays a very important role to ensure all of the topics that are expected in that grade level are covered at the level of depth that drives real true understanding. So the teacher should still apply these concepts within projects and ensure that the student learns it well, or at least ensure that anything that would be expected of the student for all of these units really is covered. So when they're racing ahead, they haven't left behind any gaps in their knowledge on any of the earlier topics. Now, the second part of your question may be, how do I actually ensure that Khan Academy has all the content that I expected to cover during the course of this school year? So Khan Academy is a global resource, and while we have students around the world, we have not mapped all of our content to every single curriculum and standard that exists around the world, because that is a very formidable task. But what we have done is we have mapped our content to the Common Core, and the Common Core is being adopted by the vast majority of states within the United States and the vast majority of schools. So we do have a preliminary mapping that shows for which standards, which exercises, and which videos align to them, and which standards aren't covered at all. So we can identify where we see some gaps existing against the Common Core. Now we're quickly trying to go in there and fill in those gaps. So make videos where we identify gaps or create exercises where we see these gaps. But there will always be some standards that really don't lend itself to online instruction. There's some conceptual things within the Common Core that require projects by their very definition, and there are things that, as we're going about filling in those gaps, there's going to be things missing in the near term. So as a teacher, what you would need to do is identify all of these gaps and make sure, as the students are going through the course of the school year, you pause and fill in any area where you do see gaps within the Khan Academy content, and really do leverage the more traditional instruction to do that. So whatever you may have used in the past, whether it's lectures or projects or other things to provide that instruction to the students, you would still have to do that wherever we identify gaps. So as a teacher, in order to identify where you would need to play this role, one, you can ask for the spreadsheet that we have of our mapping, and we'd be happy to share that with you, and that can be a starting point. But also, if your school or if you've often taught things in addition to the standards within the Common Core, you may want to identify those gaps as well. And the best way to do that would be really just to use our site, to go in, watch some videos, do some exercises, and see where we may be missing concepts that you may have taught in the past, or where you would like to augment what we have. And as you go through this process and really validate our content with your curriculum, we would really appreciate the feedback. So if you have ideas for additional videos that we can create, we would happily go in and see if we can create them. Or if you have exercises that that you recommend we create, we would also be more than willing to investigate and see if we can include it. I mean, all of that feedback is really a critical part of what we're hoping to get as you use Khan Academy in your classroom.